Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour, brought to you as always by FantasyGuru.com and the Elite Plus Network. I'm your co-host, Rich Maletto. Please don't follow me on Twitter at FantasyBosco. As always, we have the man, the myth, the legend behind the curtain, in front of the curtain for us on RaceGuru Thunder Hour, Sean Engel. Please do follow him on Twitter at SeanE247. That's SeanE247. And back again, the legend himself, Mark Hogan, DFS_Marlin. You can find on Twitter at DFS_Marlin. Gentlemen, we are back again. How are y'all doing?
Doing all right here. Just was dealing with the heat for the past couple of days, and it was brutal. Not fun to deal with that, but now that things are cooling down, I'm ready to heat things up in a different way and talk some NASCAR instead. So let's get right to it, fellas.
I'm with you, Sean. We had some heat lightning down here. There were some crazy tornadoes down in Tampa. So it's been a wild week of weather and world news, but at the center of it all, NASCAR, and we're back in Atlanta. So I'm looking forward to maybe some Austin Hill this weekend.
Yeah. Hotlanta even.
Hotlanta.
Known as Hotlanta. We're talking about the heat, and we're back at Hotlanta. Kind of interesting, right?
That is an interesting coincidence. Yeah. Wow. Never thought of it like that. Very interesting. But, we are a part of the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. And for those that don't know, we are a part of FantasyGuru.com. We're the three NASCAR writers over there. And we have plenty of things for those of you that aren't familiar with FantasyGuru.com. We got all different kinds of sports coverage over there. We got the NFL packages and the draft guide are still currently available right now. I believe there is only one more week left of early bird pricing, so you can get it at a really great discount if you hop into that right here, right now. We still have MLB content available over at FantasyGuru.com, including the guide over there and the various packages, which allows you to see content from our writers, including Ray Flowers, Scott Bondar, and the rest of the crew over there. We have the MVP, Platinum, or All-In packages as well. Basically, we use the Game Time MVP app to advertise over here. That contains all the sports content other than NFL and baseball for the year. So you can hit up support at FantasyGuru.com in order to basically get the best possible deal, as long as you get on their good side and just, be like, hey, hook me up. Let me know what's great over there. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and be sure to hit us up with some comments on whatever social media platforms you see fit. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you think. And we're going to race guru our way on in here. So how did I do with that, Rich?
Sean, you did well, except you buried the lead a little bit. There is a 50% discount going on all packages, including the Platinum package.
Now,
however, I don't remember the code that Jeff Mann said on air. So I recommend folks tune in or get on the Sirius app or reach out to Jeff on Twitter maybe, or X, and ask for that code. There was a commercial on Sirius this morning, I heard, for 50% off, which they typically do this time of year. So if you're looking to get in on everything, this is the time to buy the Platinum package. You'll never get this pricing again until, at the very least, this time next year. I really apologize. I don't remember. I want to say it was go to fantasyguru.com/game time. I want to say, let me see if I can get that to work. But there is a large discount out there. Now is the time to do it.
Yeah, and I'll point out too, the amount of football content that we've got on the site right now is outrageous. Like, I was just looking through it. I was telling my wife the other day, I'm like, not on top of everything from an NFL standpoint. Like, I feel like we're pumping out like 5 NFL articles a day, but then you look at like college football, we've already got columns on like every conference, and it's just wild how much is out there right now, and it's only June 26th.
Wild. Just wait
now,
till
that
next
discount
month.
was short. That discount was short term, so if people want to take advantage of it, they need to do it ASAP.
Truly. And then if you think you just missed out on it, that's another reason to hit up support at Fantasy Guru.
Agreed.
Because maybe, just maybe, they might be like, okay, we'll let you through.
It's like Tyler has an article out. It's about quarterback bye weeks and strategizing around it for the season. It's like, who else thinks of that before the season even starts? Like, I'm not thinking about my quarterback bye week until like week 2. And it's like, man, if I plan that out in advance, I might be so much better off with a lot of my leagues. It's crazy, man. Just getting everyone's different perspectives, and we've got overall across the board so many different contributors that we bring every angle to the table.
You know what? Credit where credit is due to Tyler Beaker over there with the bye weeks and planning them out that far in advance. He's getting to be like NASCAR when they try to plan out their schedules so many months before, and then they lay out their bye weeks for all the series right then and there when the schedule finally releases. So, but we have to give more credit and more love to Tyler because he's just one person doing that instead of a whole organization.
I'd prefer Tyler to run NASCAR versus NASCAR.
I don't disagree. And Tyler may not know much about NASCAR, but he's smart enough to know to ask. And I mean, did you guys happen to see the Mark Martin podcast with Kenny Wallace?
I did catch some snippets of that, and what I have heard, I'm just going to put it out there and say that I agree with just about everything Mark said right there.
It was funny. I tweeted at Mark or X'd or whatever you want to call it and said, the problem is, in my opinion, management doesn't want to listen to fans. Mark liked that comment. So
nice.
I think Mark and I are on the same page. And a lot of what he said,
Marks.
Mark
Martin and Hogan.
Right. Mark Martin made the comment that he thinks most of the fans want a 36 race season for the championship. So Kenny Wallace put a poll up there, and at the last time I checked the poll, it was a landslide for 36 races. Now, maybe that's just the diehard fans, and NASCAR's like, well, we don't want the diehard fans. We have the diehard fans. See, this is where I think the problem stems from. NASCAR's like, we already have the diehard fans. We don't need to bring them in. We don't need to cater them. This goes back to when Brian France was like, yeah, we did a bad job of alienating core fans, and then they continue to do it. And I understand to grow the sport, you got to get new fans. But if your core fans can't explain to the new fans what's going on or bring the passion with them, I don't know what they expect. So, honestly, I would love to see Mark Martin and Dale Jr. run NASCAR. It'll never happen, but that's what I would love to see.
I'd remember at one point that Dale Jr. said that him, Kevin Harvick, and then I think also Chip Ganassi wanted to talk about running their own racing series. And I'll just say this much. They end up doing that kind of thing or invest in a new team or league. I'm interested.
I'm interested in the Cars Tour. Junior's done a phenomenal job with the Cars Tour. And honestly, the sad part is the Cars Tour may save NASCAR in this lawsuit. I mean, if you're going to claim, monopolies, and Junior's got one that's doing its own thing, that's easy to go, hey, he was a former driver. Look what he's doing. And he works for us. So we don't have a problem with it. NASCAR's going to be NASCAR. We don't need me going down the curmudgeon territory tonight. I'm already cranky enough tonight. So,
well, I got to say, Dale Jr., you guys might be on something. And I stand corrected, man. Last week, I was hesitant about Zilich and Dale Jr. You guys, everyone told me, don't worry about it. And I just couldn't pull a trigger. And, man, you guys are right. Should have trusted you. I should have been like, majority rules, I got to give into it. I'll buy into the narrative.
You got to admit, Mark, I would say sometimes you got to admit, man, even though we're sometimes on an island or pushing some of these narrative, it comes, it's like we talked about the coach speak and drivers. And we said, yeah, for NFL, you can't trust coach speak. In NASCAR, take the drivers and teams at their word. They don't pull punches, and it seems counterintuitive. But when you've been watching the sport for so long, you see these things. The stories happen. Coincidences, rigged, whatever you want to call it. These things happen. And even Kyle Busch came out and said, look, I thought it was more a dog and pony show. I'm paraphrasing. He said publicity stunt, the same difference. And after the fact, he goes, he was much more involved and more into it than I thought and had to, So I think Junior wanted to dabble in that a little bit. I don't know that he's the technical guy, but I think from a strategy in race experience, and we see this with coaching too, right? There are some NFL coaches that are phenomenal at scheming things up, but are terrible in-game play callers, right? Or terrible in-game coaching decision guys. But they build phenomenal teams and get the right talent and this and that. It's the same thing in NASCAR. Maybe, IndyCar has strategists. They actually have people that just focus on race strategy. Maybe we have that in NASCAR and don't realize, and that's what the crew chief is, because we've heard from drivers over and over. There's 3 guys you usually see on the box, 3 people. I shouldn't say guys because I don't think it's all men, but 3 people usually see in the box, or 4. And the car chief is usually up there. The crew chief is up there. Oftentimes it's the pit team coach. We have a pit team coach, right? And the other one's usually another engineer. And it'll vary from team to team, which engineer, what type, whatever. But maybe we should just be looking at the best crew chiefs are the in-race strategists that are better than everyone else. Because how much of the race is really, all right, we need to adjust the car, but you lean on the group of engineers for that. And are we taking tires? Not. I mean, shocker, fuel mileage, right? Last couple of weeks.
Yeah. You can feel free to, as we get into our Pocono reactions right here, because this is really what we're parlaying this into. You can go ahead and tell the audience, Rich, that you knew.
But I don't feel proud saying it. It was obvious, right? It's every year at Pocono. It's every year at Michigan. When we went to these tracks twice a year, it happened twice a year. Like I said, I don't know if it's because the tracks are so wide and the drivers can vary their lines. I don't know if there's opportunity to roll off. Like we saw Chase Briscoe put down faster laps as he slowed down. I mean, we've heard drivers say this, sometimes going slower is faster. And look, I've experienced that myself, even in the low-level racing I've done or even online. Sometimes just easing and rolling in and being able to get to the throttle easier, it's a faster, smoother lap. But look, there's nothing to really be proud of here because we can go back and look, and I bet you less than 12% of the races at these tracks aren't fuel mileage. I mean, the only thing I could have done better, I guess, Sean, is remind everybody we will for sure have a rain delay because it's Pocono.
Yeah, true. We did experience that rain delay in the Cup Series race for Pocono. The Xfinity Series. Yeah, there you go. The Xfinity Series race, though, we dealt with the Dale Jr. story right there, and that paid off right there for anybody that hopped on to Connor Zilic. He ended up getting his first ever Xfinity Series win on an oval. Well, technically, I guess it's not a circular oval, but a triangular oval. So,
and hey, hat tip to OGB Snacks, right? He hit us up early in the week asking, like, are we just chasing a story? What's the deal? And we said, I'm good with it. Early in the week, I'm good taking that $5-10 bet. I mean, I wasn't going to max bet it. He did max bet it. So hat tip OGB Snacks. Scared money don't win money, man. And you definitely aren't scared to play with money. So I'll give you mad props.
Credit to him, by the way, too, because he ended up calling 2 out of the 3 races for the whole weekend right there, too.
Yes, he did.
He nailed the truck race as well with Lane Riggs ended up winning. He got his first victory of the year. But you know what? For Lane Riggs, considering how much speed he's displayed this season, you could say it's been kind of a long time coming, though.
I'm mad I didn't push that as a bet because I did tell everybody I would build our lineups around Lane Riggs. And if you did with Riggs and Chandler Smith, which I pushed, you did well. It ended up being okay. It didn't look good fading Hocevar or Heim until the fuel mileage and the incidents at the end. But it did work out. And, you know, Mark, I've got to work on contest selection. I took 12th place again in a 500-person tournament, $6.50.
Oh, that's rough, man. What type of tournament was that?
$1, man. I was in a rush. I threw in a tournament, saw a single entry 500-person tournament, said, I'll do it, threw in my lineup. And we've talked, Mark, about how I've changed my approach to DFS in general. And the wife and I were talking this weekend, and I've won a lot more this year. I mean, the dollars haven't been massive, had a couple of nice wins, but I have multiple times now finished in the top 5, top 12, top 15 throughout the year in tournaments. And I'm up playing nothing but tournaments, which is kind of counterintuitive to what we typically recommend is DFS as a whole. So next part of my game I have to work on is contest selection and quit being scared and start to get some money I'm willing to squirrel away and put in the account so I can start paying up for some real tournaments.
Yeah, I would say like, especially if you're getting 12th place, 10th place in like a 500 person, just half the field size. Theoretically, I've done this before. Like theoretically, you drop it down, you find a similar type of contest with 250 people for $1, and you might turn that 6x return into a 12x return just by having the field down. Because really what you see in the tournaments, they're so top heavy. It's like if you're not hitting in the top 5, like you were right on the cusp of actually getting a real return, and you were just outside of it. And it's like if you don't get that top 5, especially in the low entry contest, then it's not going to be worth the return, I should say. Although I would say it's worth the return knowing that you're placing well. So I think you're getting there.
That's
just get it smaller field. It sounds like to me.
Yeah, and I wasn't like salty about it. It was kind of interesting because the lineup that took it down had 2 drivers in it that I listed in the cheat sheet as recommendations to use. I just went a different direction, trying to be a little contrarian with one of them, trying to be a little ballsy with one of them. And it was kind of frustrating to look and be like, I don't know if this guy's a member, but they used the drivers I told them to. So
Yeah, I don't know if there's something to that, but I use your cheat sheet, man, and I forgot about this, but I got
that's right,
5th.
you did.
It was 5th in a 134 person tournament. So,
Okay.
and you know what I had? I had Heim in that lineup. So 134 people. I played Heim, Riggs, Hemrick, Mozak, Baldwin, and Wood. So Baldwin was my very contrarian play. And I think the build of having the 2 cheap guys in the trucks race was probably what helped. But Heim, man, I mean, he only got me 21 points and I still finished 5th.
Right.
So it's like, again, talk about ownership, and he was crushing. If I'm pissed because I was watching it, and if he didn't fall back, if that didn't happen, especially on a freaking, that was a caution, right? With the tire. Oh my God, that was painful. I was in first before that happened. So the fact that it worked its way back up into the top 5 blew my mind, but that was because of ownership. But man, like stuff like that, like or earlier this season, Blaney blew an engine and lost like 20 G's. It's like there's just been so many heartbreaking races here.
That's why the wife doesn't. That's why the wife gets frustrated when I start wanting to put bets out there, because it was just like Hamlin. We're talking about Pocono. I said all week I was all in on Hamlin. Freaking second. I mean, and I mean, and we knew fuel was going to come into it. Briscoe has let us down. You know what I mean, Sean? We've talked extensively about that.
Even on this show last week, we
talked about it last week, right? And it's funny, Mark, because I also went Baldwin for my contrarian play. Had I gone Mozak and Wood, which you still had in your lineup, had I gone Mozak and Wood and left the rest of my drivers the same, I would have taken first. Oh. That was what was, like I said, I'm glad to hear that you did profit well and better than I did, because you used the drivers I was pushing. So I was trying to, I did try to tap into my inner Mark and Sean. I tried to tap into my inner Mark, thinking about rostership and where could I go contrarian, eat the chalk at the top, don't eat the chalk at the bottom type of thing, right? Although Ben Rhodes worked. He worked. He was super, super chalky, but he worked.
Yeah. But if you played Heim and Rhodes, then that's when you're probably screwed.
Right. So, but I didn't. I faded, to your point, I faded Heim and went Rhodes. So that's a great example, actually, now that I think about it. And
it's probably good to think about, when you're starting to look at, especially these trucks races where you're just going to get so many chalky plays at the top, even Xfinity, you probably can't fit more than one 60% plus guy in your lineup. Like that's a death sentence, because you're just going to be stuck behind the entire field the whole time.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and then I'm just going to throw this out there too, but there was also a bit of an exercise with the ownership in Cup as well this past weekend too.
Yes.
Because I was mentioning all about Bubba Wallace in particular, and
I was with you.
He ended up getting that flat tire. He took that hard hit right there, and I was tilting of that because I was just tired of having so many weekends where I get so close to a perfect lineup only for one or two drivers to just be off. But at the same time, though, a lot of our subscribers and myself even ended up cashing out pretty good still regardless, because Wallace was one of the highest roster drivers of the entire weekend right there too. In some contests that I even was looking at, he was getting close to like 80 to 85% owned by the entire field.
Yeah. And it's amazing in NASCAR how just because one of your guys crashes, check the ownership. Because if the ownership, there's been way too many times this year I have cashed, even if it was just a double up type of scenario, with somebody that crashed out, or like what you ran into with Heim. And man, that was crazy watching him just go to the high side with that tire. And man, the brakes were weird in the Cup Series because, you know, they didn't talk about it much, but Bubba blew the rotor. They asked him, what would he say to his teammates? Like, oh, you got to drive your own race. 2, 3, 4 laps later, Reddick comes in and they're changing the brakes. On the front right.
And then Riley Herbst ended up having a brake issue in the race too. All of 2311 had brake issues, which was very surprising because we expected that team to be one of the best overall teams of the weekend because historically they've been really great at Pocono. They just weren't this week. But instead, we got JGR themselves putting on a very good weekend instead.
1-2.
So, 1-2. And I'll say this much. If Briscoe ended up running out at the end, I would have been winning a lot more green.
I would have been profiting well because I was all in on Hamlin all the way around. And Jen found a great line, and we were watching that. And then, you know, Buescher looked really good early on. So when his odds got a little high, we threw a little bit on Buescher for some live betting. And I told her, I said, I feel bad because at no point would I ever have suggested Briscoe throughout that event. That was not the car that I really felt like. And it was crazy to me that as he got slower, he was putting on the best laps of the day, you know? So it's racing. I mean, we were close. Like I said, you know, we weren't the only ones on Hamlin, so I'm not going to take any victory there by any means, but
that
I'm
being
tired
said,
of getting kicked in the nuts.
I know that feeling because between that and Byron running out of fuel on the last lap at Michigan, right there, I'm getting a little bit sick and tired of these gut kicks right there because this is getting so close. And even when I'm just looking back at the bets that I posted in the Discord chat, which, by the way, if you have any one of our packages right there that includes NASCAR, you can see these bets yourself. There were quite a few bets I posted that ended up hitting this past weekend, including 4 straight top 10 bets. And out of the winner bets that I posted, 3 out of the 4 finished in the top 4. So that right there is already something else to say. And I ended up hitting a group winner parlay and hitting some head-to-heads right there too. So solid betting weekend overall.
I thought it was just, you know, especially with Briscoe, would you say the broadcast embellished how potentially low he was on fuel, or would you say he was pretty close to running out? Because it seemed like he had, like, I don't know, it just didn't seem like it was as close as they were making it sound. I know that he on the burn meter was saving a lot of gas, but was that real?
Yeah, I mean, I heard it was it Larry Mack or was it must have been Letarte because Larry Mack's not on. He said that number had to have been. Yeah, he said that number had to be accurate. And I'm not shocked, Mark. We have seen this over years. Like, I mean, I remember people trying to say Brad Keselowski had an extra long fuel line because they quote Days of Thunder, right? Because he was finding ways to do it. And you can go back way further than that with Roush in general. Roush back in the 90s was notorious. They wouldn't always have the best raw speed, but man, could they run so much further than everybody else. And as slow as Briscoe, I think what really played into it was Briscoe got that much faster by slowing down. So what happened was he started backing up the corner, and realizing he wasn't losing speed, and he just kept backing up that corner more and more, because really what you're looking at that point is, I need to save as much fuel as possible, but I need to hold my position. So when he started saving all this fuel and was gaining, I think he just went into more fuel savings, because they came across on the radio and said, hey, you've done a great job. We think we're close now. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't change what you're doing. You're doing fine. So I don't think anybody embellished anything. I think he did that good of a job of backing up the corner, and the car just came to him as that happened. And so it was like a perfect storm. He slowed down, saved the fuel. And unfortunately, I just don't think Hamlin had the car at that point. And that goes into the car out front, the air, where
Clean
can you
air.
pick up speed? Right. And if Briscoe's not pushing the rear end around, what I mean by that is getting on the throttle early and trying to drive off. Think about how much harder it was for Briscoe to make a mistake. Now he's backing up the corner. He's driving in. It's a lot easier to be smooth going around there when you're not trying to get up on the wheel and outdrive somebody.
And on top of that, aero blocking with dirty air behind him played a role into Hamlin not being able to get around until.
Right. And it probably pushed him a little bit. I mean, we've seen that where that front car, it's almost like a bubble, gets a little bit of a boost. I mean, we don't hear him talk about that much, but we've seen it at Daytona and Talladega, even going back to the old car. And I think it's something they need to look at if we're really going to talk about ways to make these cars a little more fun to watch when it comes to attacking the leader. And what's interesting is everyone's like, well, you can pass because you can pass in the back of the pack. I don't buy that. Everybody in the back of the pack is dealing with turbulent air. Even if you're 8-9 car lengths behind the leader is not dealing with that turbulent air. And Dave Moody asked Matt Kenseth about it, like, well, when you come up on lap cars, how come it's not turbulent there? And Matt goes, Dave, I'll make it real simple for you. The fastest car is making the biggest hole in the air. So the fact of the matter is, yeah, that car is slow, but it's also in turbulent air. Here comes the leader. They're making the big bubble. That's the big bubble everybody else is in, right? So I think they've got to do something on that, because I do think they're almost getting a push from that air. It almost looks like it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They are. And the other thing to mention that I think was also a factor was the track itself, too, with how the turns were, especially when you look towards the line that Briscoe was taking. He was taking that recommended best line right there. And really with how the track works, especially because of that tunnel turn 2, Hamlin was not able to generate as much momentum in order to try and catch him there. Like, Hamlin was able to beat out Briscoe for a few laps here and there within turns 1 and 3, but he'd lose all of that just because Briscoe would get right into the middle of turn 2, and Hamlin just would not be able to have any sort of clean air advantage in order to go around him like that, unlike in turns 1 and 3 where you can at least get a whiff. He just couldn't get anything in turn 2.
Agreed.
Turn 2 was a mess, I feel like, the whole weekend.
It seems to go in waves. Turn 2 is typically the one you hear everybody talk about the most, yet turn 1 is historically listed as the toughest turn to get in and out of, at least fast. But there's always problems with turn 2, and I think the reason for that is they kind of diamond cut that corner. See, at Indy, you have another corner right after that's that same 90 degrees. Whereas at Pocono, you can kind of diamond cut that corner and get a straight line. So we've seen it with the telemetry where they're not using a lot of brake these days going into turn 2. They're rolling through there. And what happens is when you get that car on the outside or the inside, that air distribution just messes with the car. And honestly, if you've got a video game with Pocono on it, Mark, try driving it. Roll off that throttle, go through that corner. You would be shocked at how hard it is to keep that car straight and not sideways. Like that's everybody that's fast. You saw Denny do this as a rookie. You've seen other guys that do this. If you can be fast through turn 2, you can really set yourself apart from everybody else.
It really does make a huge difference after all of it there. So I think it's a combination of the rules package and how the cars are set up, along with the track, that really just affected conditions. So I'd say,
man, I saw the trees poking through the. I saw the trees poking through the fence, and I was remembering how we used to not have a fence there. It used to just be trees.
Yeah.
That's serious, Mark. Casey Kane went into the trees, and they're like, we need a fence. Yeah. They did not have a fence. They had a wall, but they did not have a fence there for decades, man. I mean, That's one of the oldest tracks, and we didn't get a fence there down that straightaway. I forgot. That's not Long Pond, Sean? Is it? They have all three different names. All three straightaways have different names, and I don't remember the name of that one. But yeah, Casey Kane ended up in the trees.
Yeah, which is very wild to say. But the more you know, Mark, the more you know.
They showed because it was Atlanta that led to the pit speed deal. There was a fatal tragedy at Atlanta many years ago that led to the pit speed thing. And it's funny to me to sit here and think, I vividly remember IndyCar, NASCAR, all of them, literally racing down pit road. They used to race on and off pit road. And I'm sitting here as I'm watching the race, and we've got the fence there and the trees. And I'm like, what a time. You know what I mean? Like I could vividly remember no fence there, which seems wild. No pit road speed, thinking cars are doing 120 down pit road. How wild is that? In fact, we used to race back to the caution, even with cars scattered all over the track. I mean, it's crazy to think. I mean, even the fences have gotten so much taller and everything than what they used to be. It's just kind of wild.
Yeah, it is indeed very wild. But boy, oh boy, speaking of wild things from the past at Pocono, well, we'll go into wild things that are happening right now. We got one quick breaking news story that happened earlier today as we're recording this pod, and that's actually about Rick Ware Racing. They were bought out by TJ Putcher. I'm not sure if I'm saying that.
I have to go look it up, Sean. I was hoping you knew because I'm like, I don't know who this guy is.
Well, he basically was the guy that when Spire Motorsports first entered the Cup Series in 2018, he was one of the two co-owners of that team that invested into that charter and basically became the owner. But then just last year, he kind of sold off his share to their team owner that they have now. And as it since now decided to put that money and straight up bought out Rick Ware Racing. So this already was covered in detail today. Jenna Fryer of the Associated Press basically got on the story right here. And she also covered the fact that TJ right here, he basically went out and completely bought Rick Ware Racing, and the driver lineup is not expected to change. They're still going to have Cody Ware drive that 51 car. None of the employees are getting fired. And now they're going to have a plan where they're going to try to make Rick Ware Racing back into a 3-car team by 2027 is what they're trying to estimate right here. So Rick Ware, they have 2 charters currently. They have the one for the number 51, and then they have the second that's being leased out to RFK Racing, which is being used by Ryan Preece's team, the number 60 car. So they're going to get that charter back within 2027 because their deal is good until 2026 with that. But from there, well, it seems like they're going to keep the 2 charters. So that's going to spiral into an interesting question right there with what's going to happen with RFK and even the whole Legacy Motor Club lawsuit thing where they were trying to get the second charter from Rick Ware Racing. So a lot of stuff that may end up causing a lot of questions in the future here from this story today.
I have no comment. Although I will say this, maybe he's the reason Spire was excelling when they were, because they've definitely seemed to have gone backwards a little bit from the last couple of years. I think it's interesting. He thinks the charters are undervalued.
Yeah, he thinks that the charter should be worth about 75 to 80 million each.
Okay.
Meanwhile, they've been going for around like 45 million.
That's on the high side. I mean, It wasn't that long ago. It was like 20. And I would argue you need to have some sort of return on investment if you're going to spend that. And what race team makes money?
Yeah, that is a very good question right now, especially with what the race teams have been saying these days.
Right. So anyway, I'm ready to move on when you are.
Yeah, that's all there is to that story. It's something just to follow and keep up with over the next year or two, but big and breaking. But something that is a big deal this week is NASCAR moving over to TNT. And if you guys remember TNT, they've covered the NBA, of course. And with the NBA, they did themselves an in-season tournament for over there. I'm sure you guys all heard about it. I don't know if you guys indulged in it, but they did one. Now, TNT, they're back doing NASCAR again and working with Max. So they're like, hey, let's try it with NASCAR too. Let's do an in-season tournament challenge. So with that in mind, now the next 5 races, which are all going to be on TNT and Max, they basically set up a whole in-season bracket, March Madness style, for the next 5 races, where they have 32 drivers competing in head-to-head matchups each and every week until there's one driver left standing. The one driver left standing will win $1 million. So what happens now is, even though this is a new thing, you can actually go to NASCAR.com, make your own brackets, and also DraftKings has a pool contest, so you can technically bet on this too. So what we decided to do today is we decided to prep our own brackets right here. So each one of us 3, we have our own brackets predicting the matchups and who's going to win it all and so on and so forth here. So it was an interesting exercise, I'll say that much. But what do you guys think of this and the whole exercise of making a bracket for NASCAR?
I'm curious how it's going to play out. It feels like, especially in the first round, there's a lot of uneven matchups. But also, it's like, all right, so the winner is going to win $1 million. First of all, if you place a perfect bracket, it sounds like you would get a share of $1 million. If you're the only one, you get the full $1 million, or you split it with however many people do that. Although I think there's a tiebreaker as well. I don't know. You wonder guys' motivations. Like, if we see some guys make some decisions to go after the prize money in this tournament, I think I would be maybe turned off by that. I don't know how many are going to do that, but like, you might see like an Allmendinger or someone like that try to really go for this, because it might be a way to stick out and just kind of build the brand and also knock down $1 million in the meantime. I have a hard time thinking a Ryan Blaney or a Denny Hamlin is going to prioritize winning this in-season tournament over getting stage points or over a win in a race. So it's going to be fascinating to see if there's any drivers who make some bold decisions to prioritize this over even maybe getting into the playoffs.
Yeah. To your point, Mark, I'll say this much. There was one top driver who already commented on the in-season tournament challenge this past weekend, and that was Chase Elliott, because he was actually asking the media reporters around him about that, and he was like, what's the prize for winning? He's like, $1 million? Then he was like, oh yeah, I want to win that now.
Okay.
So the drivers themselves, especially now that this is picking up steam, because this is the week to submit brackets and the challenge begins on Saturday night. Well, the drivers may end up getting more into it now that it's being pushed out there, Mark.
I'm curious Rich's take here.
No comment.
Yeah.
I don't believe in gimmicks. If it's all about the money, then let's raise the money for the winning the races. Let's raise the money. I mean, my beef with the playoffs is it's fluky. I heard Dale and Denny both kind of talk about it on their shows. And, Dale's like, maybe if we do like the last 4, like we get rid of this group and we narrow it down to say 6 and they compete over the last 4. He goes, because on any race, things can happen. And this is, we see it. We just talked about it with the betting, right? We're so close with Hamlin. We were so close with Blaney a couple of times this year. So my take on this is nothing more than a ruse to chase action. It gives NASCAR a reason to tell fans to pay attention and bet. It gives fans a reason to put money on the line. Like I literally had zero desire to talk or discuss it at all. But when our Discord channel started asking questions about bets, I had to change my stance. We are here to provide content and advice to the best of our ability based on our knowledge and data on how to parlay and join sports into making some additional money. And there's no getting around that this is a way to do that. And I won't even say that it's not a fun way. I don't know that I like that the drivers can win money. Yeah. Because to your point, Mark, I don't want to see somebody that has less to lose than somebody near the top being a bonehead or going extreme, or even to this point, you know, we used to joke that you could focus money in NASCAR and have a better race that week. We know teams circle certain dates because it's a sponsor's home track or things of that nature. So now you got a 5-race window, you're 30th in points, and you're starting to show some speed. You don't really think you have a legit shot at making the playoffs. Why would you not sell out over the next 5 races to see what you could do? And what does that mean on the track? Not to mention, we're doing this where we're going to like 3 road courses.
Yeah.
We got a super speedway event to start, which, by the way, is already going to shake up
a wild
the
card.
Entire bracket.
Right.
Then you got 2 straight road courses, one of which is a street course, and then you got Dover, and then you got Indy.
Yeah, and Indy's going to be another fuel mileage race. Just caution everybody. This I'm not clairvoyant. I get I'm 2 for 2, but anybody could predict this. Indy's going to be the same way. So it's going to be a fuel mileage race. Anything can happen at Atlanta Super Speedway. So to your point, the perfect brackets and all that, a lot of that's going to get eaten up the first week. And then the road courses are kind of wild. And we don't even do a lot of road course racing as a series, right? So I'm trying to not be a curmudgeon and ruin everybody's fun because I see people getting excited to bet on it. But overall, for me, it's much to do about nothing. At the same time, I mock the NBA for their deal. If you can't get your players to play, then there's something else wrong. Making some gimmick be like, oh, we're going to have a champion in the middle of the season to be a champion for some extra money, but that's not really the champion. Like, what? Much to do about nothing, I guess.
I will say what is nice about this from a DFS perspective is that it does add additional lines to read the books and maybe gauge some opportunities because, you know, normally on DraftKings, you get a lot of head-to-head bets, but there are a lot of even matchups where you go take a look at the bracket and there's some uneven matchups listed on there, and that helps you maybe read certain situations between a couple drivers that you wouldn't normally see in the books and make decisions in DFS accordingly.
Can we parlay those picks?
Well, I'll just say this much. I was looking on DraftKings Sportsbook earlier, and when I looked at the head-to-head section, I don't think I've seen this many head-to-head bets before that are out there that you can bet on right now. And the thing is that when you're on there, you can go ahead and parlay a couple of those bets at once.
Okay. I'm going to have to see what the offshore books have because I tell you what, one thing I wish we did get more of is the head-to-head bets. And I understand why they want to give us even money head-to-head. The problem is they give us some tough choices, and it's nothing for them to make us drink the juice on both drivers, which is why I stay away from them. Just for me, it's a principle thing. Like if it's really head-to-head, how can they both be minus 115? Like to me, it should be one should be minus 115, one should be plus 105. And if you're not willing to do that, then I find it as a trap bet, and I will never recommend it and push people that way. But if this in-season tournament allows us to do that, then I tell you what, sign me up for a 36-race tournament. Forget the playoffs. Give me a 36-race tournament. You know, Mark Martin's point was we call it a playoffs, but it's not. We're not sticking balls. All the other sports, there's no other players or teams involved other than the 2 playing. In NASCAR, you're on the field with everybody else. The 2 playing may not even win the race, right? So, you know, Mark's point was then we should just have those guys in it and start getting rid of them. And that's been my point. So if it's going to give us some more action to chase, I'll try not to poo-poo on it. But I'm just so over the gimmicks. At this point, I want some flaming jumps on the backstretch.
Why not, right? If you're going to gimmick it up, might as well go all the way. Make it a big-time show. That sounds fun, right? right there as it is. And to your point there, Rich, as far as some of the head-to-heads are concerned, I did see a couple of them where they did have some plus odds on at least one of the drivers in those head-to-heads. So that right there is something to keep an eye on, especially because this is the kind of weekend where you can really just play any head-to-head bet, and it might actually just hit. So.
Yeah, just even be wary of those because, like, to Rich's point, it's like, for example, I'm looking at Chase Elliott versus Austin Dillon. Chase Elliott is minus 220 and Austin Dillon's only plus 160. So you're like, again, to your point, you're losing value on that. And like, come on, man, Austin Dillon over Chase Elliott, that should be like plus 400. I don't know.
Right.
It just seems way off still. It's almost like it's a better value to take the favorite there. A minus 220 on Chase Elliott seems like too easy of a bet.
I'd rather take minus 220 on Chase Elliott and minus 240 or whatever it is on Ryan Blaney, right? Parlay it together and you're probably plus 170, 160. I'd much rather do that. I think the odds of those two finishing in the top 10 versus Dillon beating Elliott are greater. So why would I not want to have the better? You know what I mean? Like this is where I say they're just setting this is a gimmick to take money from folks is kind of how I see it.
The ones that I consider playing would be the ones where I think the matchup itself is very close to call. Like for me, I thought the hardest matchup to call overall within that first round at Atlanta was maybe Ty Gibbs versus Justin Haley, because performance-wise, those two have been very similar on this track type overall. And that, I had to think about that one. But if you look at the head-to-head matchup right there on DraftKings Sportsbook, they have Ty Gibbs at minus 195, but Justin Haley's at plus 145. For a matchup that close, I'd consider the plus odds there.
That makes sense, though. I would argue that we're not even on both sides, so to speak. But, I mean, it's close. If I'm going to drink that much juice for Ty Gibbs, I should get a little bit more. But to Mark's point, I would still argue if you're minus 195, then Haley should be more like plus 180. I mean, we're still, I feel like they're still squeezing us. And I'm really having a hard time with it. So.
And then the seeding with the tournament is also pretty interesting because, like, for example, Joey Logano, he's the 28th seed or something ridiculous like that. But if you look at the head-to-head between him and Alex Bowman, who's like a top 10 seed, I think he's like 3. Logano is minus 175 to win his head-to-head this week in round 1. So like even DraftKings disagrees with the seeding process that NASCAR has applied here.
Yeah, and the seeding process, for those that don't know about it, it was set up from the past 3 races and went by the driver's best finish within the past 3 races.
What arbitrary? Could you make it more just random then? Like, I'm done. I can't. I'm just going to end up ranting here, and it's not going to be good radio.
All right. How about we just get into our brackets and just bow out gracefully then? How about that, Rich? So, do you guys want me to go first, or one of you guys want to go first with unveiling our brackets?
Well, I think I picked the same bracket I did earlier because I had to do it twice, like we said, Sean. So I found it interesting that Mark and I have quite a bit of overlap. So I'm curious to see, because I did not get a glimpse at yours. So I don't care who we start with. I just wanted to give a shout out there because I did find it interesting that Mark and I had some overlap in spots I really didn't expect to see.
I'll let you start us off first here, Mark. So let's see what you got here.
How's that? You guys see that?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, okay. I got that.
Let's say just
all right. So, yeah, I mean, the way I looked at this, and I don't like, it is frustrating how they even have my results. And I ran into the same issue, Rich. I came back to this. And I had to resubmit my bracket, and the only way I even remembered all of the same picks was because I had shared that image with you guys before or earlier today. So I'm wondering, that would probably be my first, curiosity right off the bat is how many people went and did this initially, and then they go back thinking that they submitted this tournament, and then log into their account and realize that somehow the bracket didn't get submitted. That sounds like a bug to me.
3 for 3, Mark.
You
All three of us.
To use Sean as well?
Yep,
Okay.
It hit me just before I even got things set up for the show today, too. So you're welcome.
Curious how they're going to distribute that $1 million when 30,000 people reach out saying that they submitted a bracket that's not there. But it's race by race, so I prioritized Hamlin over Dillon. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but a couple things to point out is I'm heavy on Team Cindric, so Joey Logano. I got moving ahead. I like him. I like him this week over Alex Bowman. Austin Cindric, I had him going all the way into the top 4 as well, and Ryan Blaney. So I am Team Penske here. And I think just given the way it evolves, track by track, just favors some of these guys. Now, probably the scary one is the road course, or the road Chicago, I would say, because I mean even this week too, it's a super speedway type of track, so you're rolling the dice. But I'm just going with the stack, and that's how I've been approaching my DFS lineups. I've had a lot of success stacking teams. So this is where I'm getting exposure to Team Penske here. And then I got Chase Elliott to round it out. Couple interesting spots that I felt like, I disagree with other people on, just looking on social media, is I think Allmendinger can make a run. I think he can upset McDowell even this week. And I like, we're going to talk about DFS, but Justin Haley might be a pretty decent opportunity here as well from a DFS perspective. So maybe a nice little upset over quote unquote Ty Gibbs. So yeah, I think it'll be an interesting way it plays out. But the problem is here, I'm picking drivers that I like on tracks. And I think the downfall is I'm not considering like who's going to play it seriously and who's going to prioritize this over others. And so you probably are going to see some of these maybe more contrarian names get a few upsets here and there throughout the bracket.
Yeah, I certainly think there is room for some upsets to happen. Particularly, I think the next 3 weeks are going to be the biggest factors with that in mind, because other than just narrowing the field, those are the 3 biggest wild cards right there. I think the most quote-unquote normal race that we might see on here is Dover, believe it or not, because Indy can also be a wild card with the fuel mileage thing coming into play too.
And that's a championship track, right?
Yeah, that's going to be the one-on-one to settle who wins it all. So.
But you know what? That might, excuse me, but that might fucking ruin it, because Dover is one of those tracks you look forward to good racing with, right? So, and now you're going to have this huge thing about who's going to win this in-season tournament on a track like Dover. Do it in Chicago for everyone's sake. Like, make that the more interesting appeal to Chicago here before we get rid of that and replace it with San Diego. I just have a frustration with having that as the final track in the championship.
Yeah, just Indy's the final track, which you can expect more better racing than the first 3, I'd say, more closer to normal, but the fuel mileage thing is going to be a wild card, and sometimes Indy gets wild, too, with the restarts and wrecks, too.
And so does Dover, right? I mean, it's a self-cleaning track. We don't get the big one at Dover, Mark, but it's what they call a self-cleaning track. Someone spins out, which is easy to do at Dover at the high speeds and the high banking, and they'll take out 3 or 4 cars that had nothing wrong. They were running around in 5th and 6th, and they just got collected for no reason. And Mark, I hope I don't rub off on you too much, man, but I feel you on that, bro. And you said it well and took the words right out of my mouth, man.
I mean, let's just completely scald data and statistics in round 1 and 2 with the super speedway and a Chicago race. Like oh my God, it's backwards. It's set up backwards.
I agree,
the way this is set up is just a mess, a big time mess. And I'm trying to keep it clean here with saying that, but
they want chaos. NASCAR loves Game 7 chaos. To them, the Game 7 moment is anybody can win at the last second. There's a whole bunch of money involved, and what they're hoping for is that they see some aggression on the track. What they want, as much as they won't admit, they want what Austin Dillon did at Richmond. They want that. They just don't want it to be 2 cars involved. They only want it to be, say, if there's 3 cars involved, like the original All-Star race with Kyle Petty, Davey Allison, and Dale Sr. They want that. That's what they're trying to create, is mimic that one hot night in Charlotte for the All-Star race, that last lap where the 3 stars of the time were literally almost wrecking. Well, they did. The 2 of them were wrecking each other as they crossed the start-finish line. One guy had to go to the hospital. That's what NASCAR wants. They won't openly say it because, we got to punish people for intentionally wrecking unless it's for the lead on the last lap in the last turn for a lot of money. Then it's okay. So, no. That's exactly what they want. So while we think it's backwards, I'm telling you, they put a lot of thought into this. This is what they want.
Oh, 100% it is what they want. They even said they love Game 7 moments. Come on now.
Yeah, I know. They said they want to mimic them. And it's like, we aren't sticking ball. We don't have Game 7s. And by the way, Game 7 moments are special because they're rare. Idiots, man.
I could say more comments, but I'm just going to continue with the bracket.
Let's just go to the bracket because we still got to do the picks for this week, and I got to do some more writing yet, and we are definitely on a tangent of wanting to strangle all of NASCAR management at this point. So
yeah. So what, you have your bracket ready, or
I do?
No?
I do.
Okay.
I do. If I know how to present. So I'm with you, Mark. I think Dinger makes a run, man. And honestly, the way the track's set up, it bodes well for him. He runs well here in Atlanta. Then we got road courses. I think where he runs into problems is Dover. I really do.
Yeah.
He has run well there, though. I did a lot like what you did, is I went by drivers, I think, that do well at these tracks. Now, Atlanta was a little more of a wild card. I was on the fence with Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski. Kyle has typically run well here. Brad has not, but Brad's been a good super speedway racer. I'm hopeful and think he can possibly pull it off. I also like to hedge myself, so you'll notice this bracket is almost a hedge for what my DFS picks are for this week. Bubba Wallace and Daniel Suarez is another one. I just think Bubba bounces back a little bit. Other than that, I think Chase Elliott makes a run. He's been good at the road courses. He's been trending in the right direction. The speed seems to be there a little bit. And that was before I knew that all of a sudden Chase wanted to take this serious. I do think this is chalky. There's not a lot of upsets that you see in this bracket whatsoever. Bell over Stenhouse and Chastain over Jones, that sort of thing. I do think this plays well to William Byron, Denny Hamlin, and Chase Elliott, along with Dinger. So that's what you see there. I did have Dinger over Buescher because it's a road course. Buescher runs well at the road courses, so that's not necessarily a given. But I'm spot on with you. I do think this sets up well for Dinger. And let's be honest. If there's a story that NASCAR wants to tell, Dinger winning this tournament is exactly that.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
That would be a good story to tell.
He's got no shot at Cup this year, quite frankly. So that's the guy. That's the guy that would take this seriously, and he's also got the setup. So I think the cards align for him. I'm with you on Bell. Bell is scary, though, in the first round. Like, I picked him, but it's Stenhouse in Atlanta. I know. That's a scary one. But you could get really different with a couple of these, like Stenhouse over Bell. If you pick that, you're probably less than 10% of the bracket submitted. Then you go Bubba Wallace over Daniel Suarez. I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards Suarez with his success on the track. So if you see Wallace jump him, now you're probably in a 5% margin, and then you add like maybe Kyle Busch over Brad, because that's another really even matchup. But I think a lot of people like us are probably going to think Brad because he's driving better as of recent, but Kyle Busch can do it. So it's like you can pick maybe some, hold your butts type of drivers here and be in the top 1 or 2% of brackets just by going contrarian on like 3 spots.
I'll say this much. You guys have some interesting brackets, but I think you guys are definitely going to be looking at my bracket and be like,
okay.
Because I'll just say this much, that there were a couple of spots where I did go a little bit differently than you guys.
Because I think, Rich, I feel like we're being a little chalky with it.
I agree.
We're trying to win $1 million bucks.
Right. It's going to have to be some contrarian. And the more I think about it, I'm like, do I just do a Dinger bracket? You know, do I just do a dinger bracket just to be contrarian? I mean, we're both kind of feeling it, so it's not like it's an out and left field deal. Oh, now this is chalky, Sean. I mean, I hate to say it, but you know I love me some Larson, but bro, it's also kind of a ballsy call.
I think really that this bracket builds up to Larson's strengths overall as a all-around driver as it stands. I do think there is a few spots where I go a little bit differently than you guys. Like, I think this actually builds up pretty decently for Kyle Busch, for example, to make a deep run. I think he's not going to get further than Dover. But really, I think we're underestimating his value as a road course racer, especially because he's been good at Chicago with 2 top 10s there, and Sonoma, he's actually been solid there too. And really, I know you guys were both on Denny Hamlin to make a deep run, but he's not that great at Chicago. I'm just saying that right then and there. There's a few other ones where I think John Hunter Nemechek, I think, is kind of underrated when it comes to the super speedway style of racing, and he's been solid this year on those tracks. So I do think he'll at least make the second round. But yeah, I do agree with you guys on Chase Elliott making it really, really far right there. And I think it's going to be very, very close, especially if he gets to Indy, because he's not bad at Indy, but Kyle Larson is just that little bit better at Indy. He's a former winner right there too. And I know you guys, that's it right there too. And I know you guys said you were on Allmendinger to go far, but I think I'm leaning towards McDowell to finish just that little bit better here this week at Atlanta. He's been a little bit better at the super speedways overall this season, and he's got top 15s at both Daytona and Talladega earlier in the year, and Allmendinger cannot attest to that either. So I do think that whoever wins that matchup, I do think they're going to make it all the way towards perhaps Sonoma, but I think Chris Buescher right there is going to be the guy to beat because these tracks are all built for him. And I think Dover is where he's going to make it all the way right there too, no matter what. So
that's another driver that this does bode well for, that I could also see it being important, right? Like, I mean, they're on the cusp of the playoffs. The team as a whole, they seem to be so close and they just keep missing. This would be a big booster for RFK in general, a big booster to Buescher. And he does have the equipment to do it. And we know he's a top 10 driver at these road courses, as much as people don't want to give him credit for it. So I kind of really like that. I really do. And in all fairness, that corner of the bracket's tricky because Austin Cindric is a better road course racer than people have given him credit for. And he's also been a good super speedway driver. So that corner of the bracket, I would argue, it's always like, you know, when we do the Final Four stuff, there's always one quadrant that's always like head scratching, full of upsets. In my opinion, that is the quadrant to look at.
Yeah, and I just really think that Chicago is going to be a pretty good competition between Buescher and Cindric right there. But Buescher in general has been a better road course racer and has been more consistent too. And I trust him to get it done a little bit more there, especially because even though Team Penske, Cindric is probably the best road course racer of the 3 Penske drivers, Chicago is a track where he hasn't 100% figured it out to regularly finish or run top 10. So I do think Buescher is a little more trustable there too.
I'm fascinated by your JHN over Josh Berry pick on the other side.
Right.
Because I feel like Berry this week seems like a strong, I mean, if we look at the head-to-head.
I know it's a little contrarian from what you guys are thinking, but I'm also going off of recent momentum too with JHN just pulling off quite a decent finish after decent finish lately too. And he has been a little bit better than Berry overall on the super speedways this season as far as finishing position is concerned too.
So like that's one where then you bet JHN in a head-to-head too, because you can get him at plus 150 over, and Josh Berry is minus 205. I feel like it's closer than that.
Agreed.
I think Berry has the better equipment overall, and I think Berry has the better chance in order to win the race. my problem with Barry is that the fact that he doesn't always finish these races and gets tangled up into some mess. And that's where I think JHN could beat him out right there.
I like that head-to-head. That's an appealing one.
Yeah. So really, like I said, I think it also builds pretty well for Kyle Busch more than I think we're thinking here, especially because of road courses.
Well, like I said, when we get to the picks, you'll see I like the hedge, and you'll see why I went the other direction in my bracket.
Yeah. That one, I think, was one of the few matchups where I think it is almost a bit of a toss-up because
I agree.
Brad has good equipment on these types of races, but Kyle's been better at finishing at Atlanta particularly than Brad has. So I do give the nod to Kyle right there. I mean, Kyle, it does have a consecutive streak of 5 straight top 10s going into this week's Atlanta race at the track. So,
but man, he can't keep the car straight. That's the only. I just feel like the dude just keeps spinning out. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be less than 5% with good history. Like that's a leverage play for sure.
Yeah, overall right there too. So, any other questions before we move on here?
Moving on up.
All right. Let's get past the brackets. Let's actually quickly talk about the track. It's Atlanta. We basically said it. Super speedway racing. Anybody has a chance to win. You can play almost any driver, and they might have a fair chance of going in. Think about place differential. If you're betting on this, spread your bets around. Put your unit counts lower. I think that sums it up right there. Right, guys?
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, and you will have a little bit of dominators type of action in there. You're gonna have some laps led, so you gotta play a relatively balanced lineup versus like a Daytona where you're constantly chasing place differential, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed on that too. I think really we noticed that the Fords particularly have been very fast at Atlanta, and Team Penske is going to be the team to beat this week. We know that they have speed every time they come here. The only other thing that I'm going to mention in particular the tracks before we move on is that if you're playing in the Truck Series this week, they're on a different track entirely, Lime Rock Park. So Rich is going to have fun covering road racing instead of super speedway racing here. So what are your thoughts on that real quick, Rich?
So I'm just looking at the name because it is Lime Rock Park, so I got to go change stuff in my article. I kept seeing Lime Rock Speedway. It reminds me. Did you guys ever play Pole Position? The video game?
Yes, I have.
Do you remember when you would start the game and you would go easy, medium, hard?
Yep.
And the easy one wasn't an oval, but it was like a very basic road course.
Yep.
That's what Lime Rock reminds me of. It's just under 1.5 miles and it's 7 turns. This is a very unique road course. Now, I have not seen it. I haven't even seen much pictures of it. I've been trying to. It's kind of nestled in the mountains of the Appalachians there in northwest Connecticut. So I expect some elevation changes. But other than that, I would chalk this up as a not very technical road course. We have zero data, literally none. And it's a standalone truck race. So that means there's no cup, no Xfinity, no double seat time, none of that action. So, tread lightly on the trucks this week. We will get practice. We will have time to look at practice and qualifying. Tread lightly, though. I will not be shocked if we're talking about a Thomas Annunziata, for example, being in the top 5 and people being like, who? So that's about where I'm at.
Yeah, and you know what happens whenever we get into a race right there or a track for the first time in a series. You know what that means. Extended practice for trucks this week. So you'll have more driving data to come from that right there, Rich.
Yes. Would you like me to go through the rides in the trucks this week? Because we have a bunch of them.
Yeah, I think it's best that we go forth and do that and cover our list right here, too.
All right. Brent Cruz in the number 1 Tricon garage truck. He's been in the truck before. I don't know if I'd consider him a really impressive road racer, but he's no slouch. The number 2 Young's Motorsports still got to be announced. William Lambros in the number 2. I guess it's the 02 for Young's. Lambros will be in the number 2 Rome Brothers Racing Machine. Thomas Annunziata will be in the 07 Spire Motorsports. Jordan Taylor will be in the number 7 Spire Motorsports. Alex LeBay will be number 22 Rome Brothers Racing. Dale Quarterly in the number 32 NDS Motorsports Machine. Josh Balicki, who has had some nice road racing finishes, he will be in the number 44 Nice Motorsports truck. That is a name I would watch for. Timmy Hill's back in the number 56 Hill Motorsports Machine. Wesley Slimp in the number 62 Halmar Friesen Racing truck. I would also watch that machine. Halmar Friesen's based out of the New York, Canada area. They're familiar with that area and the racing up there in the locals. Don't sleep on anyone Stuart Friesen's willing to put in that truck. Cam Waters in the number 66 Thor Sport Racing truck as well.
So just as a heads up there, I was looking up who's in that 02, and yeah, they did finally announce who that was going to be. It's a 16-year-old racing sensation, Ben Meyer. So he basically is a driver that has skills from Stadium Super Trucks with Robbie Gordon, Trans Am, Cars Tour, and Travis Pastrana's Nitro Cross. So he's going to be in that 02 truck for Young's Motorsports this week. So new driver right there.
I wouldn't get too excited, but at the same time, that's exactly the type of driver I'm talking about that will shock you, will surprise you, will probably outperform what we're used to seeing that equipment doing.
Truly. So something to keep.
And he's probably, since he's drove those other series, he may be one of the only drivers with experience specifically at that track as a 16-year-old. Sounds crazy. I will look into it, but it will not shock me if that's the case.
Yeah. So he spells his name M-A-I-E-R, Ben Meyer. So there you go. In the Xfinity Series, we have Nick Lights in the 07 for SS Greenlight Racing, Garrett Smithley in the 14 for the other SS Greenlight car, Eric Almirola in the number 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing, Patrick Starpoli is in the number 24 for Sam Hunt Racing, Catherine Legg is back again in the number 32 for Jordan Anderson Racing, Joey Gase is in the number 35 for driving for his own team, Joey Gase Motorsports, Mason Massey's in the number 45 for Alpha Prime Racing. Mason Maggio's in the other Joey Gase Motorsports machine, the number 53. Leland Honeyman is still in the number 70 for Cope Family Racing. Then we have CJ McLaughlin in the number 91 for DGM Racing. Now, as for the Cup Series, we have a couple of drivers right here. We have Corey LaJoy back in the number 01 for Rick Ware Racing right there in an open car. JJ Yaley's in the number 44 for NY Racing. David Starr is in the number 66 for Garage 66. BJ McLeod is in the number 78 for Live Fast Motorsports. And then Connor Zilich in another Trackhouse Racing car in the number 87. So that right there is all our open and part-timer teams. That sets the stage.
Man, a Trackhouse stack sounds kind of interesting.
Yeah, it does sound interesting. Very interesting indeed.
Also, NY Racing? What is that? New York Racing, so, I'm assuming?
That is a small group of gentlemen. They are some builders out in Charlotte. They originally came from New York, and they've been around forever. Sometimes they go by FDNY Racing. It was kind of a tribute after 9/11 to the firefighters in New York. But there's been some drivers that have driven for him. David Reagan drove for him at one point. JJ Yaley's been there before. That is actually the team that I was in the pits with in the truck series, where I've got photos of me taking the transponder off the truck.
Nice. Okay. I mean, could they have some history with this? Well, I guess this is Cup, so I'm thinking.
They've been in Cup trucks and Xfinity. Kind of just depends. You'll only really see them more at the super speedway races, other than maybe, like I said, they are kind of local to Charlotte. It's a group of guys. I don't know that they're all at the same contracting company. I tell you what, a top 25 finish for them would be a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because most of the time when that 44 car's been in the field, they usually don't carry as much speed as almost all the entire field. So, yeah, it would be the definition of what they would say back in the day would be a back marker. So there you go.
Yes.
Before we get into our picks, just to remind our audience right here, we are part of FantasyGuru.com. We have several packages that are available to cover many different sporting needs. The NFL guide is available. You can get the NFL packages right there. There's that 50% off discount that's ongoing, so do hop on that before it is too late. The MLB content is still available over at FantasyGuru.com right there. You can get the guide and follow Ray Flowers and the rest of the MLB team in order to see all the winning content right there. We have several packages, including the MVP, Platinum, VIP, or All-In packages. So many packages, so many needs for you in order to win at fantasy sports and betting that we got it all covered. Hit up support at fantasyguru.com in order to get the best possible deal, get on their good side, and they'll hook you up. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments, and let us know how we're doing, and let us know if you're enjoying the show. But I think what you're really going to enjoy is our picks. So let's get right on into it. So how about we get into our top priced drivers in order to watch this week for Atlanta?
Let's do it.
All right. You guys both said that at the same time. That was actually kind of cool. You guys were echoing, I guess. EchoPark? I don't know. The name is silly for this track, but we're not going to call it EchoPark, but I figured I'd work that in there. Anyway, I got Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric, Christopher Bell right there. 2 of the 3 Team Penske drivers, but really I could have thrown Logano in there too, and I'd be happy with that too. Christopher Bell is the most recent Atlanta winner. He won earlier in the year. And surprisingly, he's had some pretty solid finishes in recent years, including some top 5s. He's a driver from the Toyota camp that I think you'd have to really watch this week. But you guys, who else are you guys on this week?
Well, I'm no fun. I have the same ones you did. I didn't even notice it until after I filled it out, and I looked up and I can't believe we got the same guys, because I had the same thoughts on Bell. He won this last year, started near the rear, but he's actually been pretty good at Atlanta compared to some of the other super speedways. So I'm in lockstep with you, Sean.
So I went Blaney as well, but then I'm different in the other 2 spots. Now, the one thing I will say is you guys both put down Cindric, and I would argue he's probably going to be the lowest owned high-end driver on the slate, in my opinion, just because of, he's just not as big of a name, but I mean, he's got obviously great history. So I like Cindric as well. But Logano's led all drivers and laps led in the next gen car. On this track, he's got a pair of wins. Chase Elliott's got a win here as well, and he of all of these high end drivers, he's often starting in a low spot, typically midway through the field and around the 15th position. So if we see him start around 14, 15, 16 again, that's huge. Like, I don't think people realize that, like, if you have a driver who starts 21st and finishes 10th, they're going to record less points than a driver who finishes 13th or starts 13th and finishes 6th. So, like, getting some of those higher spots in the top 10, it makes all the difference. So I like Chase Elliott as well. I think he can have easily a good day.
I like the Chase Elliott call right there too. I was actually considering him for my own picks as well, especially because one other factor that not as many people seem to really mention about Elliott at this track, it's a home race for him. So right there,
yeah, that's a good point too.
That's going to add to the motivation for him to perform well right there, wanting to win at his home track again.
I'm curious with you guys being on Bell, because I know obviously he's got a win, he does well here, but I just feel like the momentum on him is a little down, a little depressed over the last couple of races.
I'm on the fence there, and that's exactly why, Mark. I just didn't want to have all 3 Penske drivers listed. I was really, I thought I would be different with Cindric, thinking everybody would be on Logano for everything you said. And then after I put Cindric down and saw Sean wasn't on Logano, I was like, well, there went that plan. And then I thought I was being different with Bell. And then I realized that wasn't right either. I have major concerns on that with Bell because it's you know me, I like to chase that recent momentum, and his is going the wrong direction. I think it changes. Yeah. At some point over the next month, it's going to change before we get to the playoffs. I don't know if this is it. We'll see. I mean, and to be fair, when it comes to the DFS this weekend, qualifying is going to be a big deal for us, right? I mean, if you went back and looked at last year, the spring race, place differential was absolutely massive compared to the other Atlanta races. And some of that was because we went into overtime. And if I remember correctly, both fuel and incidences played into the finishing order getting mixed up. But there was I want to say 3 of the top 5 drivers started, or top 6 started 30th or worst, 31st or worst.
Mm-hmm.
Hocevar was back there. Bell was back there. Stenhouse was back there. All these drivers so if you didn't have, a bottom loaded lineup, even Hamlin had a decent finish after starting near the back. If you didn't have a lineup that was heavily based on chasing place differential for the summer, this past spring, you were struggling, which was the opposite of what we discussed on the show going into that race. We all thought people are going to be chasing place differential like they do at Daytona and Talladega. And historically, that doesn't play out. Well, it happened too this last time. I don't know that it plays out that way this year or this race, but I want to see qualifying before we really get too hell-bent. I could easily go to Logano over Cindric, or Logano over Bell, or Elliott over Bell. All this stuff we won't see practice because there is none, but where they qualify, it's going to be absolutely huge for setting our lineups.
Yeah, and I was just going to say the qualifying aspect is a reason why Bell is on my radar, despite his momentum, which, by the way, it isn't as bad as we're really thinking it out to be, because he does have 3 top 10s within the last 5 races this season. But Bell historically has not been a great qualifier at New Atlanta. In fact, actually, he's only qualified inside the top 10 only once since 2022.
Well, all the Gibbs machines have qualified poorly here. And I put this in the article that's dropping later tonight. I think part of the reason we saw so many cars in the back move up, if you remember, we've talked about this for Daytona and Talladega and Atlanta. As a general rule, you chase speed at Talladega, you chase handling at Daytona. It's a little narrower. There's more bumps. You need the car to be drivable if you're going to contend. Now, the fuel mileage and all those games get played. When we first came to Atlanta and was fresh pavement, it seemed like the cars chasing the speed, the low drag, were having success because we don't get the packs the same. So that single line that we kind of get stretched out like we used to see back in the 90s at Daytona kind of came into play. Now the track's worn a little bit. It's been literally 4 years. This will be the 4th year that we're on this specific surface. The bumps, all these characteristics that come through from tracks when they have a repave done that kind of go away and come back as it wears are coming into play. I am wondering, since we don't have practice, how many of these cars that qualify in the back are because they're set up for handling. So in qualifying, they're going to be slow. Mm-hmm. But come the race day, that may be what it takes to get up to the front. And we have historically seen the Gibbs machines and Toyota specifically struggle at these types of tracks. They've been better the last 2 years, but they've struggled at these types of tracks. They have continued to qualify poorly, to Sean's point, but they have been much more racy than what we had seen. I mean, 2 years ago, there was no doubt Ford was dominating this event. I mean, it really was. Chevy and Toyota were just waving their hands, hoping and praying. That's not the case now. It's a lot more even. The Fords definitely still have more raw speed that shows up in qualifying and the race. But I'm wondering if we're seeing some of these teams realize, hey, we need to get some handling back into these cars because this track's worn a little bit and we need that. And I am chasing a little more points differentials. I'm with you on we need to have a couple of dominators, but I'm chasing a little more points differentials this week than I have historically at Atlanta.
It's all about the sweet spot, I say, both in terms of driver setup with their cars and as far as our lineups too. We got to hit that sweet spot and that balance a little bit. Definitely way more so than Daytona and Talladega, that's for sure.
Well, let's hit the mid-tier ones. I'll go first if you don't mind. I'm on Kyle Busch. I think he's underpriced for the track. I'm with you on the 5 consecutive top 10s. It's not like they haven't had some speed. He's had some bad luck. I don't see it really phasing him. So give me Kyle Busch. The one I'm really twisted on is Chastain, which seems kind of crazy when you hear my third driver. I don't know what to do with Chastain. I just feel like he should run well here. And I know Barry has been collected, but I can't get over the fact that Barry's basically a satellite team to Penske, and he's not priced like it. So I really have a hard time not using Josh Berry right now because I don't think he's going to be as highly owned either. So it's kind of my contrarian. I think that's a savvy little pick to use.
Yeah, it's not. I actually don't disagree about considering Barry at the very least, because that 21 car, it also led quite a few laps recently, about 59 of them, if I remember precisely, in the spring before he ended up having some issues that caused him to not finish too good. So really, I think depending on where Barry qualifies, he could be on my radar as well. I think you can make the argument right there. And as far as the other two drivers, well, spoiler alert, I share those same two drivers right there with you, Rich. So I'm on Kyle Busch this week too. Give me some of KFB right there. And Ross Chastain, I like Ross for this week's race. He's been a consistent top 15 to top 10 finisher at this track the past couple of years. So I like where he's priced. I do think that, especially because Trackhouse, they've been overall solid at this track right here. That also goes into my third driver right there, Daniel Suarez. He's had a number of top 10 finishes. He's a former winner at this track. Give me some of that 99. I think this is one of his best opportunities in order to be competitive for a win left this season. And I know at this point for the playoffs, he's going to have to likely win to get in.
Yeah, I'm with you on Suarez. I had Chastain, Suarez. So I overlap with you guys on the Chastain call, and yeah, I mean Suarez. The other thing too is we talk about momentum, and I know that's a theme on my side here for tonight. But he's been on the upswing as of recent, so he's racing better than earlier this year at least. So I like Suarez. I keep thinking of that crazy finish. What was that, 2 years ago? That night race. We got another night race, of course here. So that's exciting. And then I threw out Carson Hocevar. So you got to have a short memory with him. If you've rostered him, was it last week where he wrecked or whatever that was? He had some sort of issue. But Hocevar, he's got good numbers here, man. He's got 3 races. He finished second earlier this year after he started 26th. But previous 2 races last season, 35th and 32nd, and finished 19th and 16th. So, I'm eyeing down maybe like 20, a starting position of 28th for Hocevar. And if we get that, and he finishes like 15th, that's more than enough to pay off for his price point.
I do like Hocevar. I will say that, especially if he qualifies deep, he'll be on my radar for sure. I did almost consider him as well there too.
The only scary part is this could be the race where him and Stenhouse just it completely blows up. Like this could be the one where he wrecks Stenhouse. They're caught in some sort of draft or whatever, and then these guys get after it after the race. So
it's funny you should mention that this being the track to do it, because this is a very high-speed track in order to get revenge on. I'd be, if I was more of a betting person right here, well, technically I am, I'd probably say one of the road courses or Dover would be the better call to make that right there, or one of the upcoming short track races where
but both
it's
of these
definitely
guys,
easier to do that.
This is the race though where they're going to both be aggressive. Like this is probably a track they've both circled here, right? So I feel, and I got nervous even last week. They encountered each other a couple times, but kept it clean. So yeah, I mean they can't wreck each other out, but when push comes to shove, you get 2 aggressive drivers trying to make a push for one of the tracks that they feel like they can do very well on. That might lead to a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
I think Rocco over there is smelling a disaster as it stands. So I guess maybe you might be onto something there.
He had a big day today. He's getting tired, and he's wanting my attention for some lovin's.
He's got an Allmendinger coming out here.
Oh,
he's ready to take. He's ready to get taken out.
He's after the dinger.
You a Dinger fan?
Oh yeah, I got Dinger, Stenhouse, and Haley as my value plays.
Speaking of that, let's get into it there. So you said Stenhouse, Dinger, and Haley right there. Gotta say, yeah. I don't mind the calls right there overall, Mark. I can get behind all three of them. So
I think Haley is a cheap enough price point where you don't have to get anything too crazy out of him. Allmendinger, we talked about, but this is going to be, he's averaging about 9 position increases across 3 different races, in the next gen car. So it's like, if he qualifies 15th, he can finish 10th. Like, that's more than doable on his part. We'll see. But this is definitely one that he needs. And this would also kind of line up with the narrative of winning that in-season tournament. So for all the reasons that we've already mentioned, he's a big one for me at $6,100. Stenhouse is we're all going to mention Stenhouse, it looks like, but Haley, I think really the build is going to be 2 value plays. So you got to get in 2 less than 10% owned value plays, and then build out the rest of your lineup from there.
I agree with that build. I'm on Stenhouse. I'm on Dinger. And just so you know, Mark, Dinger's average finish in this card at Atlanta is like 11.4, 11.8. So what you're describing there almost matches up to like what the numbers say. And then I threw a curveball out there. I'm still on the fence. I kind of wanted to go Ty Dillon, but he hadn't done as well lately as I thought. He also didn't do great in Atlanta. A guy that didn't do well last weekend, but I think surprised some people, and that was an interesting track anyway, but, has run fairly well lately. Give me some Shane Van Gisbergen. He did not look terrible at Daytona and Talladega, and I just think he's going to be super low owned, so I feel like it's not a bad contrarian move.
I don't mind that call either. SVG actually scored positive place differential in the last 2 super speedway events at the first race at Atlanta and at Talladega earlier in the year. So I think it's definitely in play, because if there's also another thing that we know about SVG, he's not the strongest qualifier out there right now, too. And that's going to play right into him being a pretty promising DFS option. So as far as the 3 drivers I have, well, yeah, we all talked about the first one, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He's good at these types of tracks. I think he's somebody we have to keep an eye on. Then I have Michael McDowell. I know we haven't really talked too much about McDowell, but he's surprisingly, as I mentioned when we were talking about the brackets earlier this year, he's been pretty solid on the super speedway type of races right here. He ended up finishing 11th after starting 25th at Daytona. The first Atlanta race, he started 24th and finished 13th. Talladega started 14th, finished 11th. So 3 straight top 15 finishes for McDowell. And I think for the price point, that's something we can consider right there for him to use. And even when you look back towards the last couple of finishes, he has 3 top 15 finishes in the last 4 Atlanta races, including earlier this year. So I think McDowell is somebody that I think is not going to carry as much ownership as some of the other drivers that are available in this price range. And I think he's capable of getting a solid finish. And as for the last driver right here, this one's another really deep curveball, but give me some consideration on Riley Herbst. Now, I think he's one of the more underrated super speedway racers as it was in the Xfinity Series coming up. He does not have too much Cup experience, but what he does have experience with more than any other track type is these super speedway events, because he's driven part-time in some of them before. And he's in a Toyota too, which really, I think because he's in a 2311 Toyota, and also we know the Toyotas aren't going to be the best of the qualifiers. I think considering how deep he is on the salary ladder, I like the idea of that, especially because, let's be real. Do you really think anybody's going to go out there and want to put Riley Herbst in their lineup? That is a big fat no.
Oh,
I'll take advantage
5%.
of that then. So give me that 35 driver, Riley Herbst, right there.
I'm a little nervous about that one, but like you said, I mean, that's the leverage you need. So you get a guy like that, no one else is going to be with you, and you can fly up the leaderboard pretty quickly.
Yeah, I might be on an island with that one right there, but it's not often you always see me on an island, but sometimes I think this is bold enough where I think it could pay off.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's get into our core fours right here. Get our DFS core fours out of the way. I'll start us off here. I got Ryan Blaney at 11,000 on DraftKings, 14,000 on FanDuel. Ross Chastain at 8,500 on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Daniel Suarez at 7,700 on DraftKings and 7,200 on FanDuel. And then give me Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at 6,900 on DraftKings and 6,000 on FanDuel.
I dig it. I want Blaney, I want Kyle Busch, I want Dinger, and I want Cindric. If you go with that group of four, you actually have a lot of availability on your second two drivers as far as pricing. If you go double value like Mark suggests, you can get another fairly high-end guy like Chastain, a Buescher, something like that. So that's kind of what I'm leaning on. And again, it's really going to depend on qualifying.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I went Logano, Chastain, Allmendinger, Haley. I'm not locked in on Haley, but I'm feeling pretty good about Allmendinger. Like, I guess the way I look at him too is he's kind of qualifier proof when it comes to his price point versus his history here. So I don't know if I'll be able to come off of him, but Haley is qualifying dependent. Logano and Chastain. The concept that you mentioned before, Rich, about how these guys sometimes will make adjustments after going slow and qualifying. That's a fascinating concept to me because I think the normal DFS player, even myself, I look at it and I'm just like, if Logano qualifies poorly, I don't want to play him, but if he qualifies well, I want to play him based off of what history says. If he qualifies well on this track, he's probably going to get laps led and finish in the top 5. If he doesn't, he's likely going to up somewhere along the way. So I don't know. That's probably the one really interesting concept, especially with him not racing as well. Well, I shouldn't even say that, but with him kind of, falling off a little bit. But yeah, my core 4 betting winners, I got Blaney, Logano, Cindric, Elliott. So I just went Team Penske and threw in a little Chase Elliott. Those guys are plus 800, 850, 900, and Elliott's plus 1,400. So for me, I'm just going to go all in on Penske and see if I can knock down it with one of those guys.
I couldn't do 4. I couldn't do 4. The reason I couldn't do 4, I was with you guys on the chalk, if you will. My problem is I just have this stinking suspicion it's not going to – everything we expect to happen is not going to happen is my fear. So I'm going – this isn't necessarily bold. I don't know if I'd call this bold, Sean, like your bold bet calls, but I'm probably a little bit on an island, so to speak. I don't think you guys will think I'm crazy. I just think the line's off. Give me Kyle Busch at 14-1 to win.
I almost actually considered adding that too because I'm right there with you. That line is very off.
The line's off. The finishes, he's been there. He needs a win. This is an excellent place to do it. He barely got beat out of a win there a couple of times in the last 2 years. I'm not going to say I'm all in because obviously that didn't work out with Hamlin, and I'd be foolish to try to do that crap again on somebody with double the odds or 4 times the odds. But I tell you what, this just has that. It's like baking a cake, right? Like all the ingredients are kind of mixing together here where I just feel like this is a Kyle Busch week.
Yeah, I think the Kyle Busch week is definitely going to be in play. Even though I didn't put him in my betting core 4, if there was such a thing as maybe a core 5, I probably would have stuck him in there because it was close between him and outside of the 3 Penske drivers, Blaney at 800, Logano at 850, Cindric at 900. I had Ross Chastain at a 20-1 there, plus 2,000. And I think that line is also quite off as well, considering how well Ross has ran at this track too.
And Mark's pick of Elliott, I think, is off. It is a more or less a home track for him. And it's not like when he's been at Hendrick that they haven't been, how many times he's qualified on the pole, right? I mean, he's led races. So at a track like this, I think I'd rather chase the long odds. And look, in all fairness, even the favorites are long odds. We're talking 8-1 for the guy that really, by all intents and purposes, should be the favorite. But he hasn't gotten a win here at Atlanta in the last 7 races. So, in this new car, on the new, configuration. So, he's chalky, but yet he still doesn't have that win, right? So, anyway, I don't have a problem with any of those bets, gentlemen. I really don't. And the sad thing is we're going to be guessing. There's no practice. Yeah. We're going to be guessing.
Just throw some
living
darts.
Living in that 1,200 to 2,000 plus 2,000 range, I agree. I think that's that's almost the better payoff.
Agreed. All right, so you gave us yours there, Sean. What are some other bets? You went his with some of your other bets you like for this week?
Yes, I'll get right on into it there. So I have a few top 10 bets right there. I got Daniel Suarez at plus 100 for a top 10 finish. And then I have Michael McDowell and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. both finishing in the top 10. They're both at plus 160 odds this week. But that's not the only bet I'm going to mention. They're both part of my bold bet call of the week right there, where I'm taking them as long shots to win. They're both 45-1 plus 4,500. I think considering that these two drivers have ran relatively well on this track before, and I think they're certainly going to be in play. Well, think about it too. McDowell, this is one of his best chances to win a race outside of a road course. And as for Stenhouse, this is one of his best chances to win and make the playoffs, period. So that right there,
Agreed.
He's going to be in play right there. I think the odds are definitely really deep enough that I'm willing to take a shot and throw a McChicken on it.
McChicken. Interesting. I did something a little different this week. I didn't like a lot of the top 10 bets. I'm kind of with you on Suarez, but I wanted longer odds. I didn't like even money on it. Not with the lack of momentum he's had. I know he won in the Xfinity race, but look, we all kind of suggested that could be happening. I mean, I put that in the article too. Is JR equipment, JRM equipment. I wasn't shocked by that. His home city or his hometown or home state country. So I'm going a little different. I want to parlay Chase Elliott and Christopher Bell because I felt like their juiced odds weren't as juiced as some of the others. And I really do expect top 10 finishes from both. They both have consistently been top 10 finishers. So I want to parlay Chase Elliott and Christopher Bell for plus 149. So it's not great money, but it's 1.5 times your money. And you only need 2 of these guys who have been consistently in the top 10, who have run well on this type of racing and track in the recent memory. It's kind of where I'm at. I'm not, my confidence level is not 100%, but I feel pretty good.
All right.
Yeah. I was, I did the in-season challenge, Blaney plus 1,400. Just took a shot there based off my bracket. So don't forget about the in-season bracket bets, because that could be a fun one. And then I didn't jot it down earlier, but after we talked about the head-to-heads, for me, I think if you could take like Chase Elliott over Austin Dillon and then parlay that with like Joey Logano over Alex Bowman, that could be actually a pretty sneaky value that you could get there if they let you. Yeah, plus 128 if you parlay those two together. And I just feel like Chase Elliott over Austin Dillon is a given, and Logano has the clear edge over Bowman. I'll take plus odds with that parlay.
I like that, actually. That's nice.
And again, it's 2 head-to-heads that you're probably not normally seeing, but because we have this in-season bracket, they're making it available to promote the bracket. So it might be more value than you even anticipate.
I like it. That's actually really really nice, Mark. I like that call a lot. I might have to lock that in too.
Savvy. I like that bet. It's savvy. Well, gentlemen, should we put a bow on it? Like a Chevy bow tie?
Bow tie.
Although none of us are really, well, I guess Kyle Busch is a Chevy. So I am going to put a Chevy bow tie on it. Please, as usual, go to fantasyguru.com, click subscribe, check out the different packages. I can't find the code, people. I know I heard it on the radio. I know I'm not crazy. So if you've got the radio, there is a nice discount out there. You can always reach out to support@fantasyguru.com and make sure you're getting the best deal you can. Please check out, there's tons of different packages. Please hit that like and subscribe button, especially if you are watching this on YouTube or any of the other podcast platforms. On behalf of Sean Engel, please follow on X at SeanE247 and Mark Hogan. You can follow on X at DFS_Marlin. I am Rich Maletto. Don't follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. This has been another Race Guru Thunder Hour. Until next time, peace.